Good afternoon, everyone. Well, it's exactly noon, so good day. It feels a bit presumptuous for me to be on this panel in this audience because many of you had much closer relationships with Daniel Hill III than I. In fact, when I got the notice of this session, I said I'm going, and my staff called to reserve or to register me for the day, and a call came back saying, would I come and speak? And I felt humbled by that, and I said yes, but I'm really going to speak very briefly and then go back up there and learn from people who have much more knowledge on this issue. The reason I was so pleased to see the notice, and I thank the organizers, is because in my work heading the Ontario Human Rights Commission today, I'm often hearing from, meeting with, working with people who believe that until they felt discrimination, that human rights were completely in place for everyone else in Ontario, and that the system has failed them in that discrimination has existed, has occurred in their situation. And there's very little awareness that human rights, in fact, are something quite new in Ontario, in Canada, in fact, in the world. Protected human rights, laws in place to protect human rights, are very new, and the struggle to get them fully out there, to have everyone's rights protected, is a young struggle which still leaves much to be done. And that's why I think it's so important to talk about the role that Daniel Hill played in Ontario, that he had his lived experience as a young man growing up in America, as a young man going to war, living in a society that was segregated in so many respects, and then his relationship with his wife and the implications of that. That was his lived reality, and it was his reality that spurred him and motivated him to do much of the work that we'll be talking about today and that all of us benefit from on a daily basis. So if we think back, the International Declaration of Human Rights, coming out of the experience in the Second World War, the Holocaust, the fact that so many people were murdered on the basis of their race, their religion, their sexual orientation, their disabilities, and the international community being awakened in some respects and passing this declaration. And that ultimately resulting in the Human Rights Code in Ontario and the setting up of the commission, the first Human Rights Commission in Canada. And so Dan's experience and his advocacy took him to work with others to get the code and the commission established. And I think if we look at the first code and the first commission, they reflected that experience. The first code prohibited discrimination in signs and notices, public accommodations, services and facilities, employment and trade union membership, and it dealt with the grounds of race, creed, color, nationality, ancestry, and place of origin. And it focused on the basis that discrimination was direct and intentional. Over the time that Dan Hill was at the Commission, the decade plus, the Commission and the law and the code changed a lot. And that, in fact, again, was a reflection of his change in experience during that time. Both Dan and Lawrence this morning talked about the relationship between their parents and their mother, the feminist activist. Well, the original code did not include sex as a ground, although there were some aspects of sex that were included in the initial, or protected by the initial code. So 1970, again, during his time there, sex was added to the code. Another major change that he brought in, again, a reflection of the times, was the moving away that discrimination was always intentional. In 71, as he became the chair of the Commission, the US Supreme Court, in a landmark decision, said that one needed to look at the impact of adverse treatment or conduct, not just the intention, and that if the impact of treatment was discrimination, then that came within the law. So I think it's important to look at how Dan Hill, the man, the activist, really had an impact on the institutionalized response to discrimination, to racism, to discrimination on all of the grounds. And it's also important to understand his role and to find more ways to convey that to more people, particularly young people, so that they will realize human rights for all in Ontario is still young and still has a lot of growth to do, and that it's the kind of activism reflected in the life of Dan Hill that hopefully will inspire them to become activists in their own way to complete his work. So I'm very humble to be here, but delighted on a daily basis to be part of a system which continues to learn, continues to change, to be part of a system created through the activism of the man we're focusing on here today. Thank you.